Hello, everybody, and welcome to Theology 101. Today we are going to look at the book of First Kings. First Kings is the 11th book of the Old Testament and the 5th book of the former prophets. The former prophets consists of 4 historical books: Joshua, Judges, Samuel, and Kings. 1st and 2nd Kings were not originally divided into 2 books, but were one. However, the Septuagint, which is a Greek translation of the Old Testament from the 3rd century BC, separated Kings into 2 books, which is why we have 1st and 2nd Kings today. The books of 1st and 2nd Kings covers about 370 years of history, starting from the end of King David's reign. Now, there's a debate concerning the authorship of this book. Some scholars believe that 1st and 2nd Kings was written by a single author who put together different sources, while some scholars believe this book is written by 2 or more editors. I will argue for a single author, since I believe this best explains the unity of the books from Joshua to 2nd Kings. For example, Moses' death links Joshua to Deuteronomy, Joshua's death ties Judges to Joshua, Samuel acting as the last judge unites Judges and 1 Samuel, and David's final days connects 2 Samuel to 1st and 2nd Kings. Although there may be a single author, we don't know exactly whom this author is. Let's look at the purpose of 1st and 2nd Kings. The message of 1st and 2nd Kings is about the decline and fall of the kingdom of Israel, ending in judgment. David had unified the tribes of Israel into a kingdom, and God promised that from him will come a future messianic king who will establish God's kingdom over the nations and fulfill the promises given to Abraham. However, the book of Kings tells the story of the long line of kings that came after David, and none of them lived up to this promise. Now, the overall structure of Kings can be divided into 3 sections: the reign of Solomon, a history of the kings of Israel and Judah until the destruction of Israel, and then the history of the kings of Judah until the Babylonian exile. So knowing the purpose and structure of 1st and 2nd Kings, let me give you an overview of the narratives. 1st Kings opens with 2 chapters about the kingdom passing from the aging David to his son Solomon, and David's final words to Solomon were very similar to the words of Moses to Joshua and Samuel to Israel. It is a call to remain faithful to the commands of God's covenants and to give allegiance to the God of Israel alone. However, David and Solomon then go on to conspire how they're going to strengthen their new kingdom by planning a bunch of assassinations. Then we see a glimpse into Solomon. When given an opportunity to ask for anything from God, he rightly asked for wisdom to lead Israel, which allows him to be the one to build the temple his father envisioned before. So we see the design and description of this temple. The details recall the tabernacle that Israel used to worship Yahweh in the wilderness, since it included gold, jewels, and carvings of angels and fruit trees, looking back to the Garden of Eden. In other words, the temple was supposed to be the place where God's presence will be with his people, like it was in Eden before sin entered into the world. Soon after Solomon finished building the temple, he makes unwise choices that lead to the split of his kingdom. He starts marrying the daughters of other kings, not because he wants a bunch of mothers-in-law, but to provide protection for Israel. During this time, if a king wanted to make a peace treaty with another nation, that other king will give his daughter to him to marry. Why? Because then it will guarantee that the king will not attack that nation, since he will not kill his own daughter. So Solomon marrying hundreds of women was a sign of the hundreds of peace treaties he was making with other nations. The problem with this is that God wanted Solomon to trust in him for protection from his political enemies. But instead, Solomon trusted in his political strategy for protection. Also, because of all these marriages, he began to adopt their gods and introduce idolatry into Israel. Solomon then accumulated a large amount of wealth and built a large army, and he even instituted slave labor for all of his building projects. So we see how Solomon is quickly breaking every command God gave to Israel's kings in his law. The next section of the book opens with Solomon's son, Rehoboam, who acts just like his father. Rehoboam is greedy and lusts after power, so he tries to increase taxes for slave labor. In response, the northern tribes rebel and start their own kingdom under the leadership of Jeroboam, and so we end up with the southern kingdom of Judah with its capital in Jerusalem, and the northern kingdom called Israel with its capital in Samaria. Jeroboam ends up building 2 new temples to compete with Solomon's temple, and he puts in golden calf in each one to represent Yahweh, even though God already forbid making him into an image in his law. At this point, we see a history of the different kings who ruled in Judah and Israel. In Judah, King Abijam reigned for 3 years, and he did not trust God like David. However, the next king, King Asa, ruled for 41 years and did follow David's example by doing what was right in God's eyes. He put away male prostitutes and idols that the previous kings had installed, and even removed his mother as queen because she made an idol of Asherah. After Asa, his son Jehoshaphat reigned for 25 years and followed the righteous ways of his father, and even made peace with the king of Israel during his reign. Now we transition to the kings of Judah. During King Asa's reign in Judah, King Nadab, the son of Jeroboam, ruled in Israel for 2 years and did what was evil in God's eyes. The reason for his short tenure is that Baasha conspired against him and assassinated him. Baasha made himself king by killing everybody from the line of Jeroboam, and he reigned for 24 years and continued to do evil in God's eyes. After his death, Baasha's son Elah took his place and reigned for 2 years. The reason for his short reign is that Zimri, the commander of his chariots, assassinated him and killed everybody from the line of Baasha. Then begins the reign of King Zimri, who ended up ruling for only 7 days. Yes, I said 7 days. The soldiers heard that Zimri assassinated Baasha, so they responded by making Omri, the commander of the army, their new king. When the soldiers surrounded Zimri, Zimri responded by burning his house down and killing himself. However, afterwards, Israel was divided over who would be king. Half wanted Tibni to be king, while the other wanted Omri to be king. The followers of Omri defeated the followers of Tibni, so Omri became king. Omri ended up reigning for 12 years and did more evil than any king before him. After Omri, we come to his son Ahab, who ruled for 22 years. Ahab did even more evil than his father Omri, as seen with him marrying Jezebel, the daughter of the king of the Sidonians, which led to him worshiping Baal. Ahab did more to anger God than any kings before him, which introduces us to a prophet who will battle against him, Elijah. We see that Elijah is empowered by God when he raises a widow's son back to life. Elijah confronts Ahab to tell him that Israel's current drought is a result of Ahab's idolatry, but Ahab thinks it is because of Elijah. So to settle this dispute, we see a battle between Elijah and 450 prophets of Baal on Mount Carmel. Elijah defeats the prophets of Baal by bringing fire down from heaven to consume a sacrifice, and Elijah ordered the execution of all the prophets of Baal. After this victory, God sends rain to Israel. However, Jezebel is angry with what Elijah did to the prophets of Baal, so Elijah runs for his life. Elijah believes he is completely alone fighting this battle against the idols in Israel, but God reveals himself to him, not through a strong wind, or an earthquake, or fire, but a soft whisper. Then God tells Elijah to return home and anoint Jehu to be king over Israel, and Elisha to be prophet in his place. Then we see a war break out between Syria and Israel. The king of Syria, Ben-Hadad, gathered an army with the help of 32 kings to challenge Ahab. Ahab was able to defeat Ben-Hadad multiple times, but he eventually let him go after Ben-Hadad promised that he would give back the cities his fathers took from Ahab's father, which angered God. We see Ahab's evil highlighted even more when he wants to take Naboth's vineyard from him. Naboth refuses to give his inheritance away, which caused Jezebel to write letters to the leaders who lived in Naboth's city to conspire against him and falsely accuse him of a crime and stone him to death. After Naboth was executed, Ahab took possession of his vineyard. God condemns Ahab for taking Naboth's vineyard, and Elijah prophesies that God would judge Ahab just like he did with previous evil kings. Ahab responds with repentance, so God decides to not judge him yet, but to judge his son instead. The king of Judah at this time, Jehoshaphat, meets with Ahab to see if they should battle the Syrians to take the city of Ramoth Gilead. Although hundreds of prophets told them that they would win the battle, the prophet Micaiah tells the truth and says that they will not win the battle and that all the other prophets are lying. Ahab gets upset and puts Micaiah in prison and goes with Jehoshaphat to fight the Syrians at Ramoth Gilead. During the battle, Ahab gets killed and his blood flowed into the streets and the dogs licked it up, just as God previously prophesied would happen. After Ahab comes his son, Ahaziah, who reigned over Israel for 2 years and continued to do what was evil in God's eyes by worshiping Baal. And this concludes the book of 1 Kings. Thank you to today's sponsor, On Reverence. They offer a free digital worship music app called Maskill. If you want to find out more, I'll leave some links below in the description box. If you missed the last video about the book of 2 Samuel, I'll leave a link here for you to watch. Until next time, see you.